Chromanoids. 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 Chromanoids.
Welcome, Jussi Parikka. The first question, of course, is going to be, are you human?
Barely.
Barely.
I'm barely human. I'm mostly non-human. I'm mostly something else than human, which is a biological fact, and I guess a planetary fact, but also a sort of a political stance. Why would you want to be human, is my counter question. Being human is overrated, if I want to be a provocative.
Yeah. Well, Jussi Parikka is one of the most important media theorists nowadays, and he has a very particular contribution to the Istanbul Design Biennial, and it's through the specific location of some automatons in Studio X. Could you talk a little bit about this work, please?
Yeah, it's a collaborative project with my collaborator Ayhan Aytesh, who's an Istanbul-based scholar and also a designer, and who's been researching earlier already this, let's say, the Middle Eastern legacy of automata, as well as a sort of an Orientalism that often is attached to cultures of automata over hundreds of years when they enter Europe. So we kind of, he's been interested, and I've been interested as a media archaeologist into this period of basically of what preceded the European enthusiasm for automata, which mimic human beings, which mimic nature, which mimic animals, non-human animals. But actually this becomes a really interesting prehistory, one could say, the European enthusiasm. All the kind of inventions, discussions, and let's say, and design sketches and design schemes that were invented, broadly speaking, between 850 to 1200 in, broadly speaking, Middle East. So from, we can talk about the center of activity in Baghdad, but also it reaches out to modern-day Turkey areas like Diyarbakir, and with Al-Jazari's legacy from 1206, especially the 1206 manuscripts, which are beautiful, beautiful sketches that are historically important, but we wanted to bring it to a different context. So not only a historical context, but also a design context in a way. And that was to us the really important bit. So if I want to mention also that Ayhan worked earlier with ZKM on a project called Allah's Automata, which had a bigger, it was much bigger in scope, but it was a big inspiration for this, where they kind of staged a lot of these early automata, some of them reproduction, some of them as sketches, and some of them as replicas. And in a way, we kind of piggybacked on that idea, but we wanted also to bring it, as said, to a design context, which was for us important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in your work, I think that one of the most interesting aspects in this precise work is what you are also like claiming, even in the description of it, that it is the question, are we human, has to be completed with when are we human and where are we human, no?
Exactly.
Could you develop it a little bit, please?
No, exactly. It's one of those media archaeological ideas that not only asking like what is something, but exactly when do we call something something and where do we call something something. It's a question that is geopolitically tuned, especially in the contemporary climate, which is so, again, going towards massive planetary level tensions from racist xenophobia in so many national politics. I live in Britain, and that's a horrible example in so many ways, to obviously the kind of a geopolitical crisis we live in. So all of these questions have to do with these political definitions of who counts as human being, what is the kind of image of the human being in relation to race, in relation to ethnicity, in relation to geographies, in relation to also temporalities. So again, it's a kind of a disjunction of the assumption that we would know what a human being is. So many times, people that are biologically human are not treated as human, and that's what we're doing with refugees as well, unfortunately. The whole planetary geopolitics is kind of focused on trying to think of refugees as barely human. And that's where we need to think in terms of these contemporary formations as well. But of course, our case study was this cultures of automata, and which themselves have interesting connotations to not only technology, of course, and robots, but also servantry. Like servantry, class, working for somebody, machines as helpers of human beings, but also the other way around, that if not machines, who's our servants? And that's, of course, a political question that had many geopolitical connotations as well. And this is where sort of an Orientalist legacy of automata kicks in often as well. And Aiha would know this better, and he would be able to tell much better the narrative, but it's over the hundreds of years of various representations, but also design ideas about robotics and automata. So many times they've been featured as Oriental figures. From whether it's from Middle East or then further Far East as well. So there's this sort of a weird negotiation of who counts as human beings, also in this ethnic and racial sense, that is in a way transposed as part of this history of robotics and history of automata as well. So it's actually these objects are boundary objects that through which we kind of think about like what is human and non-human in relation to technology, what is human and non-human in relation to other ethnicities, what is human and non-human in relation to gender and sexualities, all of these questions that are actually, you can start unfolding through these.
Yeah, I think that the perfect image of what you were saying is precisely one of the automatons that are in Studio X. That is like this kind of perfect construction with an elephant, and then we have like a body, and then we have like a construction, and everything is like perfectly like in a kind of an obelisk, and also like working like perfectly, like an automata, of course, no?
Yeah.
So this kind of perfect representation of perfect body that we could see, that we don't know so much if it is human or it is not, but also this kind of black box kind of knowledge, because we are seeing like all of these movements, but we are not seeing actually how they are moving, no? And this kind of magical kind of aspect of the automaton, I think it is extremely challenging, no?
It is, and it's another interesting theme. I really am glad you pick it up. Basically, this magical sense of these things exactly is about this sort of, it's another kind of almost key feature of technology in so many ways that pertains to these like miracle machines, so to speak, which seem to be perpetuating self-movement, and of course only because of technology. But we can start asking questions about contemporary technologies in a similar way. I was just fiddling with my smartphone as well. It magically connects me to my friends and does a huge amount of things, but I dare say that nobody in the room would be able to tell exactly what's going on inside the machine because of the microcircuitry. These are the ways in which we kind of transpose the similar black box idea, of course, in relation to contemporary technologies. So there's a lot there in terms of like teachings about almost like a philosophy of technology when you start thinking about automata as well. So they are like this, again, a condensation of let's say, a cultural drive that hovers between design, and design understood as trickstery, like Willem Flusser, the media philosopher, had it, and later other philosophers like Ben Singleton have been emphasizing that design is trickstery. It's supposed to trick us anyway, right? And then this sort of magical, which would be kind of like two poles in relation to it as well. So perhaps design is merely a continuation of magic by way of mundane means.
And I think that also another aspect that it was absolutely striking of your work is that we are always seeing design as something that has like a purpose in a way, no? And that it is like, of course, completely useful in a way, no? But what we are seeing in the automatons is like it's just like for fun, just like little toys or something like that. But what we are actually addressing is some political or ideological aspects of design, no? Because we could trace this kind of geopolitical maps, we could trace these economic procedures, or we could talk about the construction of the bodies and the subjects, no, in a way.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's important to understand that's a key feature in terms of like how to think design as sort of a political intervention into these sort of schemes already. A theme that we kind of comes out in a lot of the teaching we do at Winchester School of Art as well, and a lot of the other projects, and this is the kind of way in which we try to stage this here. Yeah, no, I completely agree with that as well. It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's a perfect way to show how media are not neutral at all.
Yeah, no, exactly. And in terms of neutrality, it's this figures that we wanted to play through the historical connotations, which is important as a kind of a cultural theme to understand in terms of, again, cultural exchanges between Middle East, Europe, and other regions, right? So there's this theme, but we really wanted to also kind of put it in the context of speculative design. So again, to kind of go back to what I said earlier, this becomes a way for us, what we're going to do in a workshop and a seminar later in November during the last days of the Biennale, is to put this like really fruitful historical context in the discussions and methodologies of speculative design and design fiction and contemporary arts, and try to see of how with these artistic and design methods of speculation we can start to extrapolate these themes that you mentioned, these political themes, these ideological themes, and through, let's say, inventions of future, what would it mean, for instance, if we posed a what-if question? What if the industrial age, the computer age, for instance, would have started in Baghdad around 950? What would it meant for the geopolitical modernity that instead of 19th century Victorian age and steam, age of steams and calculation machines that emerges there, we would have had that emerging from the Islamic legacy of 1100, 1200s and so forth. And these are the things that we want to kind of look at, not merely as ideology, but as real, even something more forceful. And I think instead of ideology, we can just talk about design, because it already encompasses all of it. It encompasses the political manipulation, the trickstery, the creation of worlds. So it's this sort of a like very comprehensive way of looking at design here as well.
Okay, many thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.